There's a phrase that's been circulating online lately. Nothing is more dangerous than a man who wants a new life. And this week, we've been looking at family tragedies where that idea feels disturbingly relevant. But today's story takes it somewhere almost unimaginable. Because imagine finding out that your husband, the quiet accountant you met at church, the man you've built your life with, isn't actually who he says he is. His first wife didn't die from cancer. He didn't live a quiet life before meeting you. And the reason nobody from his old life ever calls is because he killed his family. Then he got married again. For almost 18 years. John List lived the new life he'd apparently wanted. Until one television show that changed everything. Tonight, we're talking about one of America's most infamous family annihilators, John List. Welcome to the podcast You Can't Unhear. John Emil List was born September 17th, 1925, in Bay City, Michigan. Religion wasn't simply part of his childhood. It shaped the way he understood the world. He grew up Lutheran, became deeply involved with the church, and would eventually teach Sunday school himself. He was intelligent, disciplined, and extremely conventional. After high school, he served in the army during World War II. Later, he attended the University of Michigan, earning degrees in business administration and accounting. Then, during another period of military service around the Korean War, he met Helen Morris Taylor. Helen was a widow with a daughter from her previous marriage. John and Helen married in 1951 and eventually had 3 children together: Patricia, John Jr., and Frederick. From the outside, John List was assembling the exact life he'd been taught a successful man was supposed to have. Marriage, children, career, church, respectability. But maintaining that image would eventually become more important to him than the people inside it. In 1965, the List family moved to Westfield, New Jersey, and their new home was difficult to miss. It was called Breeze Knoll, a sprawling 19-room mansion with a ballroom. John's elderly mother, Alma, moved into an apartment on the 3rd floor. So now, under one enormous roof, lived 3 generations of the List family. And externally, John looked successful. But his career had become increasingly unstable. He repeatedly struggled professionally and eventually lost another job. Except this time, he didn't tell his family. Every morning, John would dress for work, leave the mansion, and maintain the appearance that everything was normal. But he wasn't going to work. His financial situation was collapsing. Investigators later learned that the mansion was heavily mortgaged, and John had been draining his mother's savings to keep everything afloat. Contemporary reporting after his capture said investigators believed he'd siphoned money from approximately $200,000 in her savings. And John apparently couldn't tolerate the humiliation of admitting any of it. There was another obsession growing alongside the financial pressure: religion. John believed the world around his family was becoming increasingly sinful. His wife Helen was struggling with alcohol and wasn't attending church the way he wanted. His teenage daughter Patricia wanted to become an actress. For most parents, that's a career aspiration. To John, it represented something darker. He feared his children were moving away from God. And slowly, his financial problems and religious beliefs began merging into one catastrophic idea. If his family became poor, John believed they could become vulnerable to sin. And if they became sinful, they might lose their chance of entering heaven. So John developed what he apparently considered a solution. A horrifying one. He would make sure they reached heaven before they had the opportunity to lose it. On the morning of November 9th, John began with Helen. He shot his wife Helen in the back of the head while she sat drinking coffee. Then he went upstairs to the third-floor apartment where his 84-year-old mother Alma lived. He killed her too. Then he waited because his children were at school. Patricia was 16. Frederick was 13. When they returned home, John killed them. But his 15-year-old son John Jr. wasn't home yet. He had a soccer game, and this detail might be one of the strangest parts of the entire case. Because John didn't immediately go searching for him. Instead, he went to watch him play. Imagine sitting there, watching your son running across a soccer field, knowing his mother, his grandmother, his sister and his brother are already dead inside your house. And knowing that when the game finishes, you're taking him home too. John brought his son back to Knoll and killed him. 5 members of his family gone in a single day. This wasn't followed by panic. There was no frantic attempt to flee immediately. John began organizing. He moved 4 of the bodies into the ballroom, while his mother's body remained upstairs. He cancelled deliveries. He contacted the children's schools and created the impression that the family would be away visiting a sick relative. He removed photographs of himself from the house. He left religious music playing. And most importantly, he wrote a 5-page letter to his pastor. In it, John explained why he'd done it. Financial ruin, his family's religious future, his belief that he was somehow protecting their souls. He wasn't writing like a man who believed he'd committed an inexplicable act. He had constructed an explanation. Then, John List disappeared. And his preparations worked. Days passed, then weeks. Knoll remained illuminated, with lights glowing throughout the mansion. Neighbours assumed the Lists were away. But eventually, the lights began disappearing. One, then another, as bulbs burned out. Finally, on December 7th, 1971, almost an entire month after the murders, police entered Knoll. Inside, they discovered the List family. But John had something investigators desperately needed. Time. Nearly 4 weeks of it. His car was later located at John F. Kennedy International Airport. It looked like he might have boarded a plane, but investigators couldn't find evidence that he actually had. And that appears to have been the point. While police searched, John was already disappearing into America. He eventually made his way west, settling in Colorado. And somewhere along the way, John Emil List stopped existing. He became Robert Peter Clark, aka Bob. He went back into accounting. He joined a Lutheran church. He became involved with church activities. Essentially, John didn't reinvent himself into some radically different person. He rebuilt the same life. Accountant, churchgoer, quiet, reserved, and respectable. And in 1985, he met Dolores Miller. They married. She knew him as Bob Clark. According to later reporting, he'd told people that his first wife had died of cancer. Imagine that lie. Helen hadn't died from cancer. She'd been murdered by the man now calmly describing himself as her widower. And his 3 children? Erased. By 1988, Bob and Dolores moved to the Richmond, Virginia area, where he once again worked as an accountant. For almost 18 years, John List had escaped. By the late 1980s, the investigation had grown cold. Then came a relatively new television program, America's Most Wanted. The concept was simple. Take fugitives law enforcement couldn't find, put their faces in millions of American homes, and ask viewers, do you recognize this person? But John List presented a problem. Nearly 18 years had passed. Nobody knew exactly what he looked like anymore, so forensic artist Frank Bender was brought in. Instead of drawing him, Bender created a three-dimensional bust showing how List might have aged. Receding hair, older features, and importantly, glasses. On May 21st, 1989, the episode aired. The resemblance was extraordinary, and more than 200 tips reportedly came in. One of the people watching was Wanda Flannery. She had known a man named Bob Clark in Colorado, and when she saw that face, she recognized him. Investigators followed the leads to Virginia. On June 1st, 1989, FBI agents walked into the Richmond accounting office where Robert Clark worked. After almost 18 years, the hunt was over. John remained remarkably composed, and initially, he wouldn't even admit he was John List. But there was one thing he couldn't reinvent: his fingerprints. Authorities compared them with List's military records. They matched. Robert Peter Clark was John Emil List. And the strange thing is, his second wife reportedly had no idea. The man she'd married, the quiet, church-going accountant, had been one of America's most wanted fugitives. John was eventually returned to New Jersey, and in 1990, he finally faced trial. His defense argued that he had been mentally impaired at the time of the murders, but the prosecution painted a very different picture. The jury rejected his defense. On April 12, 1990, John List was convicted of 5 counts of first-degree murder. He received 5 consecutive life sentences. Even years later, John's explanation remained disturbing. He continued framing the murders through religion. He believed killing his family had protected them from spiritual ruin. And when asked why he hadn't simply killed himself too, his reasoning essentially came back to the same belief system. Suicide would prevent him from reaching heaven. So his family had to die, while John got to live. When I read this story, I was thinking to myself, wouldn't killing also prevent him from reaching heaven? Unbelievable. There's one final detail about Breeze Knoll that has become almost legendary. The mansion had an enormous stained glass skylight in its ballroom. For years, stories circulated claiming it was an authentic Tiffany piece, potentially worth around $100,000 in 1971, meaning the financially desperate accountant may have been standing underneath something valuable enough to dramatically change his situation without realizing it. But there's an important caveat. That story has been repeated for decades. Yet there is no surviving appraisal proving the skylight was actually a Tiffany original or establishing its value. And we'll never know for certain, because in August 1972, less than a year after the murders, Breeze Knoll burned down in an unsolved arson fire. The skylight was destroyed with it. A new house was eventually constructed on the property. John List died in prison in 2008, at the age of 82. And when I look at this case, I keep coming back to the same thing. John claimed he murdered his family because he wanted to save them. Because of money, because of religion, because he feared what might happen to their souls. But after killing them, John didn't turn himself in. He didn't spend 18 years consumed by public repentance. He built himself another life, another career, another church community, another marriage. He told people his first wife died from cancer and simply removed his children from his biography. And that's why that phrase we've been talking about this week feels particularly unsettling here. Nothing is more dangerous than a man who wants a new life. Because John List didn't only want one. After eliminating everyone connected to the old one, he actually got it. For 18 years. Thanks for joining me tonight. If you enjoy this episode, please don't forget to subscribe because we're doing a family tragedy series this week. Until next time, stay curious, stay safe, and I'll see you on the next episode of the podcast You Can't Unhear.